Hey everyone, welcome to this video where we're diving into Bill C-9, officially called the Combating Hate Act. This is a Canadian bill introduced in September 2025 that amends the criminal code to tackle hate propaganda, hate crimes, and access to places like places of worship or cultural centers. It's meant to fight rising hate incidents like antisemitism, but critics argue it goes too far and chips away at our democratic freedoms. Things like free speech, the right to protest, and checks on government power. Today, I'll pull out the key parts that could be seen as anti-democratic, explain them in everyday language, and why they matter. Let's break it down section by section, straight from the bill's text. No legalese, just plain talk. First up, the removal of the Attorney General's consent for hate propaganda charges. In the old rules, if someone wanted to charge you with spreading hate speech, the Attorney General, basically a top government lawyer, had to sign off on it. This was a safeguard to make sure charges weren't frivolous or politically driven. Bill C-9 scraps that entirely in clauses 3 and 4. Now, any cop or prosecutor can slap you with these charges without that extra check. In layman's terms, think of it like removing the boss's approval before firing someone. Without it, charges could pile up based on personal biases or pressure from loud groups. This could scare people into self-censoring their opinions, even if they're not actually hateful. That's anti-democratic because it erodes free speech without oversight. Critics say this opens the door to politically motivated prosecutions and abusive private charges, turning the law into a tool for silencing dissent. Next, the new definition of hatred in Clause 4. The bill defines it as the emotion that involves detestation or vilification and that is stronger than disdain or dislike. It also says something isn't hate just because it discredits, humiliates, hurts, or offends. Sounds reasonable? Critics aren't buying it. They point out this is broader and vaguer than what Canada's Supreme Court has said in past cases, where hate had to be extreme and tied to real harm like violence. In simple terms, this lowers the bar so much that strongly criticizing a group, say calling out a religion's practices or a cultural tradition you disagree with, could get labeled as hate. It's anti-democratic because vague laws make people afraid to speak up, chilling open debate in a free society. One brief calls it a dystopian amendment that polices thoughts and feelings instead of actions. Clause 4 also creates a new offense for willfully promoting hatred by displaying certain symbols in public, like Nazi swastikas, SS bolts, or anything linked to Canada's list of terrorist groups, or even stuff that looks similar. On the surface, banning Nazi stuff makes sense. But here's the rub. Canada's terrorist list is decided behind closed doors by politicians, with little transparency or appeal rights. It could snag symbols from legitimate movements like flags for Palestinian Kurdish or Tamil causes, even in peaceful protests. Layman's explanation: imagine waving a flag at a rally for freedom and boom, you're charged with promoting hatred because some politician labeled a related group as terrorists. This is anti-democratic as it lets the government decide what's hateful expression without clear rules, potentially banning political speech and symbols that aren't actually calling for harm. Defenses exist for things like art or education, but they're narrow and require proving it's not contrary to the public interest. Who decides that? Moving to Clause 5, this adds a whole new hate crime offense. If you commit any crime, from mischief to assault, and it's motivated by hatred based on things like race, religion, or sexual orientation, it becomes a separate charge with bumped up penalties up to life in prison for serious underlying crimes. Plain speak, say you tag a wall with graffiti that's seen as biased, normally a minor thing, but now it could land you years extra because of hate motivation. Critics argue this duplicates existing laws and lets prosecutors stack charges to force plea deals or add stigma. Anti-democratic vibe, it risks turning everyday offenses into thought crimes where your motives are judged subjectively, discouraging free expression and giving too much power to label actions as hateful without proof of real intent to harm. Finally, Clause 6 introduces offenses for intimidation or obstructing access to places like places of worship, cultural centers, schools run by specific groups, or cemeteries. Intimidation means doing something to provoke a state of fear to stop someone from going there, up to 10 years in jail. Obstruction is blocking access outright. In everyday terms, if you're protesting outside a church event and someone feels scared, not even threatened with violence, just fearful, you could be charged. This could shut down peaceful demos, like picketing a religious group over their views or blocking a cultural event tied to controversial politics. Why anti-democratic? Protests are a cornerstone of democracy, but this gives vague powers to police protests based on subjective fear, potentially protecting powerful institutions from criticism while limiting our right to assemble. There's an exception for just communicating information nearby, but it's narrow and doesn't cover disruptive but legal actions like chanting or signs. Plus, a recent committee amendment removed the good faith religious belief defense from hate speech laws, which could hit religious expression even harder. So, wrapping up, Bill C-9 aims to combat hate, which is important, but these parts, removing safeguards, vague definitions, symbol bans, extra hate charges, and anti-protest rules, could undermine democracy by expanding state power over speech, thoughts, and assembly without enough checks. It's like giving the government a bigger hammer for hate, but risking it smashes freedoms instead. The government says it's charter compliant and balanced, but many groups warn it's overbroad and could lead to a police state vibe. What do you think? Hit the comments, share this, and maybe reach out to your MP. Thanks for watching. Stay informed.